last week, for those of you who weren't here, we had some channeling. So we're going to go over some of the material. Now, we're not going to go through it boom, boom, boom. We're going to move around a little bit. But last week, our lesson, our instructor was a soul who channeled through me, and apparently Beth and I have the same impressions of what this gentleman looked like, which would be kind of Eastern, tall, thin, beard, thinning hair, kind of like mine, less hair than I've got though. And well, his teaching method was a lot to be desired. But if we look at, that's not page 3, just flip over page 1, towards the bottom. It's he asks a question, and the question was, why are you here? Of course, he originally asked the Candace question, but it was a good question because we all ask that. Why are we here? Why am I here? And granted, he had a roundabout way of doing it, but the end response was, you are here to brighten your life. Because your light bright, because as your light brightens, the less there is to shroud. Now, the soul, in just about any reading you look at, whether it's ancient or current, Christian or pagan, doesn't make a difference where you look. It's always going to be described as a light. The soul is a light, is a spark. And it flows very well into the next point I want to mention, which is back on the first page. You only have to flip it back and clean. Yeah, your wrist will get a little bit of exercise there. And it flows into one of the teachings of Christ, because he tells us the purpose of growth is that your light, your spark might increase. Because while you are here, that spark is within, entombed in your body. It's illumination. It is, as Christ has written, a light under a bushel. And you are all sparks of light. And that light is under a bushel. And you are that bushel. Now, we've all heard this particular teaching of Jesus. If you light a lamp, do you put it under a bushel? We've all heard it, yes? Did you ever think that you were the bushel? So, what are your thoughts about you being the bushel? And just so you know, this concept is not new. It's an old concept. Where he uses the term bushel, other writings use the term tomb, sarcophagus, casket, imprisoned. They all have their own different connotations and such. But what are your thoughts about that idea there? And, I'll ask Sharon, because she's gazing away.
Well, a couple things came to mind. One of them was that song that we used to hear when we were kids, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." That was what popped in my head. And I thought, yes, we all are born with that spark. We all have that spark, but we have to learn how to bring it out of us. And some people don't, some people can't. some people are crushed and it's in there, but they can't get it out. Other people, you meet people and they are just so light. I mean, light meaning their personalities are just beautiful. And and that to me is what's radiating out of them, is that spark when they're like that. So, yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking with it.
I like that you said learn learn to let it shine, or learn to shine that light.
Yes, learn how to let it out.
That's it, let it out. I like that you said that, because we're not taught that we're lights. Typically, we're taught that we're an annoyance, we're a problem, we're in the way. Any of this sound familiar? Any of us remember this from childhood? Children should be seen and not heard. You know, we're not taught that we're lights. We're always taught that there's something wrong with us. And usually there's not anything wrong with us. Anything wrong with you, Angelique?
There's more things wrong with my bushel than my life.
Good way to put that. There's more things wrong with our bushels than our light. And I like that you said that, because he tells us that, here we go. And this was in response to something about Sharon. But he says they do not know they are a bushel, because they are polishing the inside of their bushel.
Right.
And he asks the question, do you know what happens when you polish the inside of your bushel?
And I said, you can't see out.
Right.
And nothing gets in.
Can't see out, nothing gets in. But I like that Angelique said that there's problems with our bushel. There's problems with my bushel. And when we spend a lot of time polishing the inside of our bushel, what happens with our light? Sandy?
Well, I guess it dims. I was thinking too that when you're in there and you're polishing that bushel, you do get a radiance that reflects back on you. And I think it's like you're in your protection in there. So maybe it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's an inner growth.
I know you had the right idea, because the light is reflected back to us. And if we are the light, pardon?
But it's dimmer.
Is it dimmer? The only one
It's a
seeing the,
reflection,
yes.
so it's not
And what is it reflecting?
accurate.
What is it reflecting?
Reflecting, it's like a mirror.
Yes, and what does a mirror reflect?
You.
What you see, your physical self.
What you see. Just go with what you see.
See,
Okay, you are the light in a bushel that's been polished. And your light is being reflected back upon you.
I'm gonna get a sunburn.
Make sure you bring sunscreen.
Make sure I first. Not gonna get real far.
No, you're not going to get real far. But what's happening?
Well, it's not being nourished
Nope,
by outside light, that's
Nope.
for sure.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Your light is being reflected back upon you. What is happening?
It's
Blinding you.
Not really diminishing. It is blinding you, but you know, even with your eyes closed, that bright of a light, you can't block it out.
If it can't illuminate around you, you can't learn from it because you don't see anything around
But what do you see? What is the only thing you see?
you. Yourself.
Exactly. You're polishing the inside of your basket. The light is being reflected back upon you. And typically you're going to be full of yourself, which I've been accused of being quite often. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Of course, what is it that we're always told to do when we have problems? We go within. The answers are always within. But if the answers are always within and you're shining up your bushel there, you're not really going to find the answer within, because whatever is within is going to be without. Or whatever's inside of you is going to be outside. Make sense so far? And I made a very important discovery from our previous lesson from this soul. And what I got from that was that, we create our reality. And what is create? Create is the verb. And the reality we create is what we do. Our environment is what we think, but our reality is what we do. You see somebody you don't like, oh man, I can't stand this person. Why are they coming over here to bother me? And they hold their hand out. What do? Do you shake their hand or do you turn away?
Shake the hand. We're
Shake
both
their hand?
elbows in these days.
Yeah, bump elbows these
Bump
days.
elbows.
I gotta catch up with that one. So you shake their hand. How about you, Tom? Do you shake their hand or you walk away?
No, I shake their hand.
Shake their hand. Connie, shake their hand or walk away?
Some people I may even run away.
She's gonna run away. If you ever want a contradiction of opinion, she's the one to ask, but she'll give it to you just to get you to think. So it doesn't make a difference if you go ahead and take their hand or if you run away. Because you're creating your environment. You're outside of your bushel and you are creating your reality, whether you shake their hand or you turn around and walk away or run away in some cases. Now, how does that compare with what you're thinking about? Oh man, why are they coming up to me? You automatically shake their hand. Ray, any thoughts on that? What's the difference between shaking their hand and thinking, oh God, why are they coming to me?
Well, in shaking the hand, you're being open to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one, I think it's very self-centered that, they're imposing on me. I mean, I always would shake their hand. I mean,
It's the polite thing to do.
well, it's polite, but
It's the kind thing.
but
to
it's
do.
it's open
Mhm.
to what they may offer. I have a question. They're talking about shelters, and they are all shelters, but when I see that word shelter, that strikes me as a comforting thing, but I don't think that's what he's meaning.
No, he's not.
He's not.
He's not.
It's like this, like I'm shrouded. Now, I don't think that's, he's not thinking of shelter in terms of safe and secure. He's thinking in terms of covering up, I guess.
We'll come back to that. I've got my hand on, we'll come back to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
The difference between the two is by shaking their hand, you're creating the reality that you have to participate in. The thought, oh God, why are they coming to me? It's your environment. This is what you have to put up with. This is what you have to deal with. What's in your head, you don't have to deal with that because it's in whose head? Your head. So the only one who has to deal with what's in your head is you. So this is your bushel. Your light's inside. Your light is thoughts, because light is always knowledge. Your knowledge is inside. It's your thoughts. And he goes on to say that we should spend more time lifting the bushel up and seeing what's outside, and paying more attention to what's outside than what's within the bushel. Make sense?
So when shaking someone's hand, you're lifting the bush.
Yes.
But there are some whose energies I don't want to share with.
Well, very good, thank you. There's always going to be energies you don't want to share with. Doesn't mean you have to take it in.
Well, that's when I run
Remember these
away.
baggage cleaning yeah. Yeah.
And I stand there, grit my teeth and think in my head, take the higher road, take the higher road, take the higher road.
So you're forcing yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing either. Because the correct thing to do in all actuality is to shake their hand. That's just the correct thing to do. I mean, one of the basic teachings of spiritualism is be kind. Shaking their hand is being kind. Of course, there's more in that because I'm sifting through it, expanding on it, but I don't want to get caught up in that. But let's come back to what Ray was saying. Let me see here. Let's get this whole thing correctly. All right, this was a question, how may I remember more? Remember what? Remember what it was like before entering this incarnation. Why would you want to know? So I can learn. What can you learn then, or from then, that you cannot learn now? Are you not in a bushel? This whole concept of bushel must have been fantastic because he keeps using it, this analogy. Are you not in a bushel? Were you not in a bushel before? Now remember, this is the bushel. Your form is the bushel. So if you were in a previous life, you're thinking, oh, well, yeah, I was in a form in a previous life. You were still in a bushel. You following his train of thought there? Okay, so not what I was like. Not when you were light, but you are light now. Are we not all light beings? Souls? And this gets into what Ray was bringing up. When you go into a house and then you go into another house, are they different? Maybe physically, but they are all shelters.
Shelter was my word.
Exactly. I wasn't saying you specifically, but exactly. Houses are shelters. And what do shelters do?
Protect us.
Protect you. You go on a camping trip. We all like to camp, right? Only when I was a child. Not anymore.
Ground has gotten harder.
Exactly. The ground has gotten harder. I need to beef up my shelter.
It's not
And it's
me.
further
It's
away.
not me. The ground has gotten harder.
It's a lot further away.
It's a lot further. I used to like to sleep on the ground, but it's gotten.
Oh, yeah.
That's where the Boy Scouts are Boy Scouts, because we're young.
That's right. That's right. It's not Man Scouts.
Oh, so yeah, you put up a tent, you build shelter. A shelter protects you. What does this body do for your soul?
Well, obviously it protects us, right? Doesn't feel that way sometimes.
No.
Protects us from the people that she wants to run away from.
Yeah. So the body or your bushel protects your soul. And the thing that I found in these spiritualist books that I've been reading, and some of these are about Allan Kardec and those that I mentioned, those books are about soul teachings gained from, today's term is channeling. But they would use the term home circles, transmediumship. But channeling is what we're familiar with. That's the term we're familiar with. So maybe I should start using that term that we're familiar with instead of trying to force another term on you. They're imposing stuff, and that's always problematic in itself. But they tell us, now if I can remember where my train of thought went to, because somebody hit a switch and it just went shoo. But I don't know. So we'll just move on. So this is our shelter, and we're all lights. They all teach us that. The spiritualist books teach us that. The religious books teach us that. We're all lights. Even science teaches us that, or at least they suggest it. One of PMH Atwater's books, Future Memory, suggests that we are crystallized light. I thought, cool. But that's another talk. So when we hear this whole idea about in a bushel, we know that there's talking about the body. And we know that when he tells us to try, we should be trying to lift this bushel up. He's suggesting to us to live in a fashion that matches what we're thinking. Because if we're thinking, oh, God, why is this person coming towards me? We don't stand there. We just calmly turn around and walk away and hope that they don't chase us down. And that would probably be the better thing to do than to shake their hand and grimace and do something that you're uncomfortable with. Because then that bushel starts to weigh heavy. And once it starts weighing heavy, well, it's more difficult to pick up. And a lot of the teachings that they share with those people in those seances is that we should become what we can be there while we're here. Does that make sense to anybody?
Yep.
We're all
Now
dying
you
to
know
get there.
why.
What?
Now you know why I run away.
Yeah. But yeah, whatever we can be like, whatever we can be in the soul realm, we can be here. And it's better here. Because not only did this teacher tell us, but many other teachers shared in those spiritualist writings, that it is your experiences that determine where you will gravitate to when you do discard this bushel. If you want to gravitate to the higher realms, to the better realms, to the vacation place in Jamaica, you want to do better here. And one of the ways to do better here is to match up what you're thinking with how you are acting. Because then the two are in harmony. And that's what life is all about, is being in harmony. It doesn't say that you have to like everybody. It does say that you have to be kind to everybody. but it doesn't say you have to be buddies with them. Because it says that if you don't like being around this person, don't be around this person. It's that simple. Of course, when we're working, that's an altogether different thing. Then we gotta, oh, man. But the nice thing about being human is that we're flexible. Humans tend to do the better thing. All right, I gotta deal with this person. I might as well find a way to enjoy dealing with this person. That's the human way. Now, if any of you read any of the occult books, you'll know that the human is different from man in general or mankind. Mankind is the type of person that say, just get away from me, all right? I don't like you. Why do you even come around? They're not very nice. In the occult writings, they're considered the animal. So if you read any of the occult writings and they're talking about animals, that's the type of person they're talking about. They're typically those who do not try to nurture others. And the human is one who nurtures everyone around them. So, any thoughts? And Angelique, what are your thoughts about today's lesson?
There's definitely value, a lot to process. Now it's my time to rest and digest, as I call it, like take it all in and then figure out how I can actually incorporate that into my life and where I need to hone in and do better.
Good, good. And you can do better. We can all do better. I can do better. And sometimes I'm full of myself. One spot of my bushel, I just keep bouncing away.
And you notice how it's never the part that's got the chink in it, right? It's always the perfect spot that you
Well, of
shine. and
course.
polish. It's not the one that's,
Of
dented.
course, we never go looking for trouble. It's just when somebody comes around and spins our bushel around that oh man, there's a back. Oh man, I don't know. This looks much. Any last thoughts, Connie?
We all just need to find that balance and still be able to grow and have our light shine brighter.
Exactly. Exactly. Once we find balance, balance will lead us to harmony. Any last thoughts, Ray?
Well, if I could make my bushel a little thinner,
And you can.
then the light that's in there will start to leak out and be a positive influence.
In the way to make it thinner is to match up what you're thinking with how you're acting. Then that light just emanates. When you read in these spiritual writings about how they see the glory of God upon somebody or how the glory of God emanates from somebody, they're talking about that inner light. They're talking about your soul shining through the bushel. So, any last thoughts, Sharon?
Well, the thought came to mind that my grandmother used to say, actually, her old teacher, an old teacher, she used to say, when you were faced with that person coming up to you and you're like, you don't want to do, you say to yourself, the soul in me loves the soul in you. And this is because then you've taken all of that other stuff away and you're just soul to soul. And if you can do that, I guess half the battle is won, at least, because it's not always easy to do that. Because there are people that you just, like you said, grit your teeth and you want to run the other way. But if you are in a situation where you have to do that, try it and see if it helps you get through it.
Does anybody know what she just said? Change your perspective about them. That's all you have to do. You just change your perspective. You go from, oh man, why are they, to, what can I do with this guy now? So, any last thoughts, Sandy?
I was thinking the same thing. And definitely the quote about the soul in me loves the soul in you. And I think that also when you can achieve that, you're now placing the person in front of you, giving that person the gift of respect. Even though you may not respect them on any other level.
Right. You take it to a higher level. The important stuff got through. Even though your audio was breaking through, the important stuff got through. You take it to a higher level. Very good. Very good. Any last thoughts, Beth?
No, I just enjoyed this discussion. Very good.
Ken?
Yeah, I've got three, but we can't do them all.
Pick the one in the middle.
One is so good that I think I gotta mention it. You know, I go to, O'Brien's Fitness Center, and I was walking out carrying my gym bag, and I stopped in the lobby. And they got a lobby there and the lounge, and there was a homeless guy sitting in there. It was cold out. And I said, oh, he probably came in to get warm. He's got his shoes off, because they're laying on a couch like this, you know, and I'm forming opinions already. And saying to myself, I better avoid this guy. I was gonna walk into the lounge, I think I maybe better avoid him. Oh, yeah, I lost my keys, but I had to go back in there to try to find my keys, and so I went over and I looked like under his table to see if my keys were there, and they weren't, and I walked back out, and then I'm standing there wondering what to do next, and he starts walking towards me, and I said, oh, God, no, he's gonna come over and panhandle me now, you know, and he looked terrible, beard and crouched over. He came up to me and started whispering to me, I can't hear anything anyhow. He was whispering to me. So I took my ear and I stuck it right up by his mouth so I could hear what he was saying. It came out something like, didn't you go to Swiss Valley years ago? You were a regular there. And then it came to me, he was a ski instructor there. And now they had hired him, believe it or not, there's a skate park at O'Brien Fitness Center. They hired him to give kids these aerial lessons where they flip through the air. He was a ski instructor. I didn't recognize him. He looked like an old bum, but he'd gotten old and he was not in good shape. You know, I made this judgment totally ahead of time. I was totally wrong. I got to talking to him. I knew him well. His name's Mark Osborne. You'll probably see his face in the paper for leading kids at the skate park. And he was whispering to me, just a totally different. I mean, he looked like an old bum in his old age. And I made a distinction and I was wrong. And we had a good talk, and I was glad I talked to him. And I've seen him in there since, and we always talk. So now I know you can't judge a book by the cover. There you have it.
And your keys were in your pocket the entire time, weren't they?
You know, they called me. I went home. O'Brien's Fitness Center called and said, you left your keys here. We found them on the floor. Well, I got all my keys on there, so I got in the car, I had to go back, I went back and I got them. You know how they found them? Because on your keys, you've got that little card in there that you put show it to the reader.
Right?
And it goes zip and lets you in.
Yep.
Well, that's how they found out who I was, and I had my phone number. So, what I was thinking, now, that was a synchronicity that Carl Jung talked about. It's a synchronicity that happens and it ends in a good place. Had I not lost my keys, I would not have gone back. I would not have seen that man. I would not have made that connection with him. It was almost like it was fated out to be that way. He was a heck of a nice guy. He even told me, he said, these young kids I'm trying to teach, they're